application of differential privacy to 2020 data products is kind of what started this conversation. I think it'd be helpful tonight just to go back and understand like why 2020 is important, why the census is important, and at the end, I think we've got some real examples to show kind of like why, how TP can affect cities and counties in real concrete ways. So, we'll talk about why 2020 is important, how people get notified about the census, how they're going to respond to the census. That's different this year with the introduction of internet response and the data release schedule to freshen you up on your civics classes from high school. So, 2020 census, why does it matter? These are probably the main reasons that the census is important. It's, you know, if you go out constitutionally, it's the second. It's in the the first article, in the second article, first paragraph. It's like, but it's like the first article is really short. It's like 1 sentence. So I mean, it's right up there at the front. And the main thing is to reapportion seats. So that's why the count, you know, occurs every 10 years. But we also use it in redistricting and local level block level data, which is think of it as city blocks or anything bound by physical boundaries. Population counts are included or tabulated inside those areas, along with housing units, occupied or not, some racial and age characteristics. So this is really important data from the standpoint of everything from congressional seats all the way down to city council and county commission districts, those sorts of things. It's also used in a lot of funding formulas, and I'll give you an example of that later in the presentation. But funding formulas are often presented on, you might see some earlier this week about $1.5 trillion in federal funding is tied to the census. And it's just like, it's not per capita. So don't be thinking about like, you know, for every one person in this is $100,000. It's not, that's not how it works out. The funding formulas that use census data are very complex. And they can be everything like a denominator and a per capita sort of thing, or they can be something, you know, we're just trying to figure out how many people there are, or it could be something more like income or any other number of things. So rarely is it a straight line between people and like money. But where it is a straight line is inside state government. For cities and counties, one of the ways that the data is used is the distribution of state share revenues back to cities and counties. So when you, the sales taxes that are collected by the state is a huge part of the state revenue, obviously. They take, it's about, I think I got the next slide, about 5%. It's about, anyway, they collect, you know, the 7%. The states take some small portion of that 7%. The cities and counties take some portion that's about 5% of the 7%. So it's a very small piece of it, and they it's given back to them. And it's allocated to them primarily using per capita basis. In some cases, some of the revenues that the state collects, they go back on, you know, like the area of the county and equal share, and then some of it's per capita. Sometimes it's just like the sales tax, it's just straight per capita to cities. So it's kind of a way of equalizing, you know, redistributing the money the state sales taxes back to cities and counties. And it's a substantial portion of it. It's a meaningful portion of their revenues that they spend every year. So MTAS, which is this is UT Institute of Public Service, they put a number on it, what the value of one person is when it comes to budget planning for a city. And it's $140 per year, $141 per year last year. So take that times 10 years, that's $1,400 per year per person. $1,400 over the next 10 years that's missed by a city or county if the person's not counted. So that's a real number that you can use, and it's it gives, you know, it's not like this 1.5 trillion which you just can't wrap your head around. It's $140 per person. Where do they count? Addresses. Most of the Census Bureau's addresses they come in through. It's built over time. Locally, there's an opportunity to update and actually look at the address files. So the Planning Commission or various sorts of people, they look at the address file and actually tell the Census Bureau it's right along. They get new addresses when the houses are built. They also use USPS data to find these things. Changes, areas that are changing, areas where there's been demolition, whatever it is. One thing that's different this year is that in the 2010 census, they literally sent someone to every single address before the census occurred and surveyed basically every house and make sure they had the right address list correct before the census started.
It's happening right now, isn't it?
They've completed it, and they did it in September and October. And what was different this time was that they combined this in-office canvassing using GIS technology, all sorts of others, even Street View and other sorts of things where they could go in and look at the data. And that's the processing center in Jeffersonville, Indiana, where it's just a field of people that that will be transitioning into the people who actually enter the census forms that are turned, paper forms that are turned in. But for now, they're in there plugging in, looking at maps, trying to do swipes, look for changes and those sorts of things. That resulted in areas that were sent out to the campus. So they hired 40,000 people with laptops who walk around like this, go into houses and knocking on doors. Is this a housing unit? How many housing units besides this one door that I see here, looking around back? So they completed that. They just surveyed 35% of the country as a whole, 50 million addresses across the entire country. Now, how will you respond? So the timing of this is that it goes out in March. You'll get a postcard, a letter of invitation in the mail. It asks you some basic questions. The questions that it's asking are, if you've ever, I filled out the 2010 census, I don't know what but the questions are the same. There's only a short form. They ask you, how many people live in the house? Are there some people that are just there sometimes that are on census day that might not normally be there? Who are they? Do you own or rent your house? And then they ask everyone that lives in the household, name, sex, age, date of birth, Hispanic or Latino ethnicity, race, but they also ask you your origin, so you can put down Irish, or German, or Japanese, whatever it is, you can put down all those sorts of things too. And then your relationship to the household. The one other thing, the one real change to the questions being asked this time around is that same-sex householders will be, you'll be able to select that too. So there'll be some new data in the entire country about prevalence of same-sex. Yeah.
I was in a random question. So I only know a little bit about this, just enough to be dangerous. So how is the American Community Survey different from something like the census long form, the decennial long form?
So there was no decennial long form in 2010. It hasn't been a decennial long form since 2000. ACS replaced it.
Okay.
And ACS is a survey of 3 million households a year, which replaced the long form, which was 1 in every 6 households used to get the long form. So the questionnaire, it can be filled out for the first time online. So this will be a web-based questionnaire. In most cases, everyone will get a chance to do the web questionnaire. So you'll get a postcard, about 12-digit code, you type in, and you'll call up and say, this is the address, if I'm in the right place here, and then you can start reading the information for it. This is a screen capture from where someone demoed it at a meeting recently. It's not out where you can look at it and see what it looks like. But it's the first time it's been used. Other countries have used it, but it's the first time in the US it's been used.
Another really great question. This is like teaming you up for an adaptive design. Is there anything like that going on?
They have been resistant. Well, so what do you mean by adaptive design?
All right. So basically, the conditional probability responses from, say, the web questionnaire will influence the design before you decide to go collect data in person.
They've been resistant to that. They try to keep everything as strictly design-based estimates and not want to have any models for probabilities. I personally believe they can save a lot of money by doing something more adaptive, but they're resistant to that.
So the first time it's going to be used, it also is going to be something where you'll be able to go, I think this tool will be publicly available. You'll be able to go out and see the response rates across the country on a daily basis. So out of that, this is calculation. Ideally, that's going to give people some additional information so they can go out and market these people, market these places, try to get them to inform. So everybody, everyone is going to, sorry, that was so much bad. Everyone is going to get an invitation, ideally, right? It's about, I just tallied it up for Tennessee today, we tweeted it out. It's for Tennessee, 2/3 of the households will get this internet first. So they're calling it internet first choice. Okay, so internet first. That means that you're not going to get a paper form sent to your mailbox. You're only going to get this invitation to go online and complete it. If they reminded you 4 times and you still haven't completed it, they'll send you a paper form. But this came out earlier this week. This is a map of census tracts across the country where there will be a form mailed with the invitation. And that form is being sent to places where there are, I don't know, low internet responses. They put it down, but low internet subscription rates, and then higher proportions of people will increase.
We've been using the internet for the ACS for a few years, and so I think they need to try to get some idea of internet response from that.
From this.
We like they say low
Low
internet
internet
response.
response to the ACS.
So I think they've got some using the ACS model kind of the internet up to 50%.
So the response rate there.
Is it
Oh, and then by
UT?
people, is that?
Is that UT in that census tract? That's I was wondering if that's yeah,
That is South Knoxville going into UT, that kind of thing.
yeah.
You can go online. It's like the mail contact strategy viewer. If you're by areas that have concentrations of people who don't speak English very well, like over 20% of the tract is made up of that, you get a bilingual invitation. But there is only like 20,000 households out of 3 million in the state that are going to get that. So that'll be interesting. Who's going to participate? 2010, 76% of people filled out the form. So that left the balance, 24,000, 24%. And they're not going to try to collect that via the census taker. They did a survey, Pew Research did a survey that showed that 84% of people probably will respond. Yeah, that'd be an amazing response rate if it happened. It probably won't. But what's interesting is the younger you are, the least likely you are, the less likely you are to respond. So a third of people under age 30 don't plan to respond. The older you are, the higher response rates. And then there's differences between blacks and Hispanics and also income. So this kind of makes the backbone part of kind of strategies where you try to market these areas. So this all kind of happens in non-response follow-up, which is where they go knock on the doors, people have them return their forms, happens this spring and summer. And that's the bulk of the hiring that you hear about, and all the recruitment's on to try to get people, if you just come out of PhD, you know, you're gonna have a job for a few months to the census. The census taker, they're gonna hire 500,000 people for that. If you're into workflows and that sort of thing, and you want to learn about the technology behind it, there's a really good presentation from the Esri conference this year where they show like the mobile workflow that the census takers are going to have. And everything's done from an iPhone, everything from the places where they're going to go to the route to take to when their work availability is, and their mileage and everything like that's all done. Really, really cool. So let's see how that goes. And are you going to talk about Title 15?
I was not.
Okay, but this is probably worth mentioning. We'll talk about 2 things. Well, first off is the release schedule. So, reminder, this has to be done by the state counts for apportionment have to go to the president by December 31st of 2020. So that's when they have to land on the president's desk. By March of 2021, you'll probably start seeing data products. They kind of flow out on a state-by-state basis, but that's when the first redistricting data comes out. Pretty limited set of information.
At the December products, just the state level total, right?
State level total. That's it. And I guess they may do calculations as far as the number of seats from each state. Tennessee is there's an estimate that's out there. Tennessee is like more than likely going to retain its the 9 seats it has. It probably won't gain. We're slightly closer to gaining the seat than we are to losing one, so that's kind of what to expect there. And then the more Descriptive products come out in the middle of summer. It's called the Demographic and Housing Characteristics file now, which is formerly called Summary File 1. But, so Title 13. Responses to the census are confidential, and they remain confidential for 72 years. And the 1940 census was released, was this summer? I think it might have been. Was it? It was very recent. So 1940 was just released, so you can go out online and look at the responses to the 1940 census. Title 13, just in a nutshell, means that the Census Bureau cannot release the data for any reasons other than for statistical purposes. Individual responses can't be sent to other government agencies, they can't be sent to law enforcement, they can't be sent to courts. They're confidential, they're protected by this law called Title 13. And the Census Bureau people take it extremely seriously. Everything that they ingest is Title 13 protected from the moment they give it. If I hand them an address file, it's Title 13 protected, and I can't look at my own address file unless I have a special sworn clearance. I went through that, and you have to get. If anyone's gone through clearance, it's probably not as bad as that, but it is medical records and all this sort of stuff. So they take it extremely seriously. I don't know if there's ever been any violations of it or anyone to go to jail, but I've been on the phone and I said, can you tell me something about this thing? I want to know, can you tell me, are there addresses in Fort Campbell? Addresses are protected by Title 13. And the response was, I can't tell you that. So these types of information, they are taken very seriously, and it kind of underpins what Nicholas is going to talk about, which is that the potential for people to be re-identified could violate the Title 13 dictate that the Census Bureau lives and reside. So with that, is there any questions about operational sorts of things? Production? Okay. All right. Nicholas is going to the meeting.
Is any of this at all related to business data products or business censuses? I know there are also, migration, daily or kind of things. Are any of these?
It is. I think of it as decennial information is foundational data that kind of underlies American Community Surveys or population estimates, these sorts of other products that are built on top of that. Yes, there's a relationship, whether it's might control it or somehow, but yeah, it's a big piece of those products too.
Like the Title 13 protections apply to all of that. And in fact, if you look at the history of privacy in the census, I don't know how long ago Title 13, the current protections came in after World War II. Because they were not private in World War II, they actually told the Department of Defense were Japanese people were doing. But the earliest people concerned about census privacy were actually business owners, because in the 1800s, business data was collected as part of the decennial census. And they were the first people to be really concerned about privacy. But like the economic census and all that stuff, it doesn't depend, that's pretty separated from the decennial and the ACS operations inside the Census Bureau, but they're absolutely subject to the same legal protections as far as the data. The biggest user outside the decennial census of census data is it serves as a control or post-stratification for household surveys across the government. And the big one is the American Community Survey you mentioned. So the American Community Survey is a much, much more extensive survey. It's got income, and whether or not you have indoor plumbing, whether or not you have a disability. Since I think that can have 3 million people. But they control that when they scale up from the 3 million to create estimates of the entire population. They control that by using the decennial census. So to kind of begin with, how did they protect privacy in 2010 and earlier? They used, there's a small literature and a suite of techniques called statistical disclosure controls. And the biggest statistical disclosure controls used in the Census Bureau were swapping. And so basically what they would do would be like create a tabulation. If there was a small cell, maybe there were a few people in maybe this block group in this particular cell, what they would actually do is they would find another household of the same size somewhere in the state, randomly and swap the individuals. So if there was a Hispanic person and they were the only person living in the block, that person would get swapped with another household somewhere in the state, and maybe they no longer have a Hispanic count for that block. But they would only do that for, we actually don't know the rules for what got swapped and what not. And they've insisted throughout that the rules themselves are releasing the rules would be a disclosure risk. That if people knew what the rules were, they could know, or perhaps back out some information that census didn't intend them to have. So, as I said, the swapping rate was confidential. We don't know how it happens, it did. And that's the way they've done it for, I think since 1950 was when they started the swapping regime.
How does swapping affect the point estimates and confidence intervals?
Well, we don't do point estimates. Well, we do point estimates. We don't do confidence intervals for the second census because we assume it's 100%.
Well, I mean, I've seen this for the ACS.
ACS is confidence intervals because that's a survey of 3 million people, and then we create. But it's interesting, if you look at the confidence intervals for the ACS, because the ACS is controlled to the decennial. So if you were to look at, say, the ACS estimates for a number of African Americans in Knox County, the confidence interval for that is 0, and that's because that's something that's controlled to from the decennial census. But yeah, we assume that there's no uncertainty, and they've always assumed that there's no uncertainty in the census, although that will change in 2020. So census has, kind of throughout the decade, they thought that cybersecurity was kind of the biggest threat to the census going forward. The census carries an enormous amount in the trust the public has in the census. The census, most surveys say the census is, people have a pretty high trust in the census. And when people don't trust the census, they don't fill out the surveys, and things get really expensive. So they take public trust in their agency very seriously. So one of the big things they've been concerned about is they became aware that, and if you do the math, the number of tabulations from the number of cells being published from the 2010 census, there's actually more cells being published than there are people in the United States. There's about 300 some odd million people. Now, most of the cells are zero counts and things like that. But so they've basically done database reconstruction, and they found out internally that someone with the right external data could probably reconstruct individual records. Something like, I think it's about 20% of the US population. We don't know who, we don't know who names can be attributed to that. But that's one of the things they're concerned about. And it's come along as larger thing that we've been releasing data and we've been thinking that we're anonymizing it, like suppose we strip names and addresses, does that anonymize something? And we're finding out that it doesn't. And so here's an example that a lot of people in the Census Bureau were talking about. This happened about 10 years ago, I think, maybe a little bit less. But Netflix, I don't know if you remember the Netflix Prize. They created an anonymized data set of Netflix records. They stripped names and addresses from it, but we saw the movies being checked out or rented. They wanted data scientists to come up with an algorithm that could better predict what movie to recommend someone watch. And these people were published in 2008. Look at the reason. They showed it's actually quite easy for someone with the right information to identify individual records. And they gave an example. Suppose someone is, and actually found someone, suppose someone is gay or lesbian. Netflix knows that probably from the types of movies that they rent. But maybe the neighbors don't know that. And so they gave an example of, suppose you go to your neighbor's house and you see a few movies that they've rented. Maybe none of them are special interest gay lesbian movies, but other movies. So it'd be pretty easy. They said if you know 3 movies that someone has rented at a particular point in time, you can, with pretty close to 100% accuracy, find out where they are in the database and find their entire viewing history. And so that was a real wake-up call within the census that we need to be careful if we think our data are anonymous. With someone with the right information may be able to completely rate. And the problem for them is you never know what information is out there now, and you never know what information will be out there 10 years from now. So we're trying to think about how can we create a mechanism that, not knowing what information is out there, we can somehow make people's data safe.
So, with the Netflix prize, were they actually releasing individual level records?
Yes.
While the census is only releasing block, group, tract, county level aggregates?
Yes. And so, well, the census does in some cases release microdata. It's usually a sample, and we do it more for the ACS. So the census is definitely in the business of releasing microdata. But they definitely considered what would be the risks of.
So hypothetically, PUMs, real people, we can, follow, connect the dots.
Yes, and that's their concern. So the PUMs, public use microdata sample, for a lot of their records, for a lot of their surveys, they do release individual records, just like Netflix does, where they've stripped out names, and they do swapping for that, you don't know what. As researchers, I use PUMs all the time. And they're definitely trying to figure out how to get there with differential privacy, and that is mathematically a much thornier problem. They've started this privacy journey with the decennial census because it's a pretty easy survey. There's only 7 variables there. And so in some sense, our dream is to reveal information about the population, but nothing about individuals. We want to know how many African Americans there are, but we don't want to reveal any information about an individual person. That's kind of the dream of census. That's mathematically impossible, but that's where we want to get. And so, why do we care about privacy in the decennial census? Some people have asked us. It seems to be obvious why we care about privacy in like American community survey. You have a disability, you may not want that released. But a lot of people question what's possibly private about things like age, race, sex, Hispanic origin, tenure, or relation to household. And I can think about a lot of reasons why you might not want this to be released, especially with same-sex relationships being part of relationship to householding. That may not be something you want your employer knowing, for example. The efforts within census to create private data accelerated very, very quickly in the last 2 years as we started talking about adding a citizenship question to the census. That had a huge part in why census has been going so quickly in this direction. Was because they care a lot about trust. They care a lot about trust of minority people taking the census. And we're not having this citizenship question anymore, thank God. But that was the type of data that they didn't want to release. And they didn't want to be reproducible. But I can think of all kinds of things. Like, so for example, suppose, I don't know, LinkedIn or this monster still around, something like that. I can imagine an employer maybe being willing to pay, maybe in some tech industries, to know what your age is. There is age discrimination in a lot of industries. I can see things even things like age might potentially be something you don't want people to know about. Yeah.
I'll just have some friends who work in the data aggregation business, and it's sort of like the more things you give me to link to, the more third-party data sets I can link, and more targeted my advertising and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. And certainly things like race and Hispanic origin might be something that you don't want out there. It's a pretty easy data set. This literally is everything that's collected by a decennial census. I don't think I left anything out, right? Yeah, I think that's it. The other question is like how many people in your household? They actually don't release that when you do that accounting. But a lot of that is quality control. They want to make sure that if you say that there's 5 people in your house, that they've gotten 5 pages of returns. That's kind of their base quality check. Is there anybody else living in your house or who normally lives in your house? They do that to see if that person's been counted anywhere else, or if there are any people couch surfing, for example. Undercount, a lot of it has to do with, we believe that a lot of the undercount in the census is related to like low-income people who are kind of living with relatives, African-American children, extraordinarily high likelihood of being undercounted.
In the old days, like, census 70s, 80s, 90s,
Yeah.
there used to be a whole bunch of information about the buildings, the housing itself. Is that moved into the ACS?
That's all in the ACS. There's another survey called the American Housing Survey, which has a lot of information about the building. But most of that stuff, like how big is it, how many rooms, all that's in the ACS. And the reason why they did that was they definitely wanted to simplify the decennial census to increase the response rates.
Mm-hmm.
When they were doing that, they used to, before 2000 and earlier, 1 in 6 people got what was called the long form, which asked all these extra questions. And response rates for the long form were low. And that taints the idea that they can get 100% counts. And so they said, let's separate these efforts. Let's just have a decennial, it's just, everybody gets it, it's a simple form, and then we'll have the ACS. Also, they have problems training, there are serious skills in administering a survey and talking to households and helping them through it, especially when there are, 100 complicated questions like there are on the long form or the ACS. And it was an enormous challenge to train a few thousand people every 10 years to have those skills and then to fire them again a few months later. Whereas with the decennial census, there are a lot less training that needs to happen with the people on the phones and going door to door helping people. And they invest their money in training the American Community Survey workers, and they have a full-time professional staff of people that help with that. So a lot of reasons why they split this up. So the move to go to differential privacy in the census really is just about a year and a half old from when they kind of went public with this. And so this was something that was published in Science News back in January of this year. And so, let's get into some math of this. For starters, the algorithm that they've chosen is actually kind of tailored for the census. Differential privacy, one of the earliest developers of differential privacy is a computer scientist named Cynthia Bork at Harvard. And she pretty much developed differential privacy with the census in mind. So, first of all, differential privacy is a definition, not an algorithm. So there are many algorithms which may be differentially private. And the way we define something that's differentially private is, let's imagine a database query mechanism, something that hits the database and returns a randomized result. And so, for example, to give something that could be, potentially interesting, how many non-citizens are there? So we're imagining something that the result we get is whatever the truth is inside the census. There's a mechanism that somehow feeds that true number through a randomized mechanism, and what we get out is something not the truth. And so the question is just adding noise to a number. That's a random mechanism. And how do you do that in a way that protects people's privacy? And so going on with the definition, they kind of have a worst case assumption. Assume you have a data set, call that data set 0, that has complete information for everybody but one person. So let's say complete information for n-1 people. You can imagine querying that data set. Suppose you know the answer. You know how many non-citizens there are in the data set. Now let's imagine another data set in which this time you are in the data set. So I kind of have a data set in which everybody goes, people know everything about the rest of the population, but nothing about you. And now here you are in the data sets. Basically, what is the difference between the number of non-citizens in the data set without you, and what is the number of non-citizens in the data set with you? And can someone figure out what the number of citizens? from the information they have and this new data set published by the census that has it. So we say that the mechanism is epsilon differential private. It's defined in terms of basically odds ratio. So if you look at the PDF, the probability density function of, so we're getting back from the database is a random number. So we look at the PDF, what you're getting back from the data set with you, and the PDF of the data set without you. And we hope that the difference in those probability density functions is really tiny. So basically, the distribution of non-citizens in the data set with you and the distribution of non-citizen results in the data set without you, those are the same distribution. In some sense, it doesn't matter whether or not you're in the data set. What is coming back out, that random number that's coming out, will be basically the same with or without you. That's the definition of differential privacy. Another way of thinking about it is a mechanism is epsilon differentially private if the inclusion or exclusion of an individual in a data set has a negligible effect on the odds of whatever your count of non-citizens is, or your count of number of African Americans, or count of number of 20-year-olds. If the mechanism that creates that result is basically the same with or without you. That's the definition of epsilon differential privacy. I'll give an example of how they're doing that in just a second. So one thing I want to point out is that this is kind of a worst case scenario. The assumption is that the attacker has information about the entire population except for you. They have complete information about the world, they just don't know about you. The question is, does the census give them information about you? This is by far a worst case scenario. In their marketing, they're calling this future-proof. The idea being that we don't know what information will be out there in 5, 10, 15 years, so we're just going to assume that all of the information is out there, except for the information about you. So now to get into kind of how it's been applied. And so the census has, this is an extraordinarily quickly moving scientific target in the census. They still don't have all the answers solved for how they're going to create published estimates for 2020. So they've been moving extraordinarily quickly. And I think they really had the fire put under them by the whole discussion around the citizenship question. They released a few test products, and they put their code for some of the test products up on GitHub. So they did a test in Providence, Rhode Island in 2018. It's called the end-to-end test, where they kind of test as much as they can about the entire census process from beginning to end. And they released some differentially private data for that. The 1940 census is the most recent census, which is beyond that 72-year window. So they released a data set in which they've taken their differentially private mechanism and basically re-released the 1940 census, and they put all the code on GitHub. And so you can see the actual 1940 census individual results, and then you can see tabulations by county, and we didn't have blocks then, but enumeration districts. And so you can see that comparison between what it would look like. And so I'll show some of these results. And then just a month ago, they released basically the 2010 decennial census again. Where again, the algorithm's evolving. And they've added some new whistles and bells that they didn't have with the 1940. This is actually an example of a slide put together by folks down there. I've been collaborating with some folks at which is at the Minnesota Pop Center, and they disseminate a lot of microdata internationally. But they've been really concerned about differential privacy. But this is an example that they put together from the 1940s to kind of show, to help walk through how differential privacy is being used in the census. So let's imagine you have a microdata set that looks like this. This would be like the tabulation, not tabulation, the individual records that the census collects for people. They don't get schooling, but 1940 they did. And so imagine these are, imagine this is your data set. And you know, there's a bunch of similar individuals here. You can represent that data set as a histogram. So you can think of a fully saturated histogram of every single variable that's there. These are equivalent representations. The microdata set and a fully saturated histogram of every single possible permutation. So that's the first thing that the census does, is they are creating a fully saturated version of the histogram. They do it at the national level. And so, same information between these two representations. One mechanism, really easy mechanism that satisfies that definition of differential privacy, epsilon differential privacy, is if you're dealing with a continuous distribution, is to add a Laplace random noise. And this is a Laplace distribution that looks like that. It's got much heavier tails than a Gaussian distribution. It's got exponentially declining tails instead of quadratically exponentially declining tails. And if you're dealing with discrete data, the discrete equivalent of the Laplace is the geometric distribution. The geometric distribution is usually defined in positive numbers, but you can mirror it and define it on positive and negatives. And so that's actually what they do, is for every single number in a table, they are drawing a random number from the geometric distribution and adding it to their histogram.
From a hypothesis testing perspective, what kind of guarantees can we get when differential privacy is applied to the underlying data?
What do you mean?
I mean, you know, so I'm going to get a p-value if I do a chi-square test on something coming here, right? So suppose instead of having the real data, I have the, you know, yeah. So it's not immediately clear to me, you know, if the marginals are changing at all, like, you know, really, what's going on here from, you know, do we have any bounds, you know, do we have ranges?
They haven't worked out all the hypothesis testing, but it's going to be a mixture distribution. Yeah. Because you're integrating your truth with across some other exponential distribution. You can figure out what that mixture is and do the math. They have not provided any software to help with this. That's way far down their to-do list. But one of their arguments for doing this is they're saying, unlike swapping, in which you had no idea how we were changing the data, here we're telling you exactly how we're changing the data. Now, obviously, you don't know what the random number is, but we're telling you exactly what that distribution is. And so basically, we're leaving it up to the statisticians to figure out how you would then modify your tests, assuming that every number is modified by some random number with a distribution that you know.
Are policy people, when we start talking about changing funding allocations, where now they're going to be pointing that, you know,
let's delay that discussion. You want to have that discussion? Let's delay it.
The easy answer is central limit theorem, right? Like at some point, you have enough people where you're going to get a normal distribution, so the noise should be normal distribution.
I think what we're seeing is that they're basically adding the same noise to every table. And so we see is at the national level, it makes a tiny fraction. But at the block level, it can totally change things. And we'll show you some things. If you see when you do this, in fact, this mechanism doesn't even preserve the total population. So we started out with 100 people. And when we add our geometric noise, we may end up with something else. And this turned out to be a big problem, and they've kind of worked through it. But one thing I want to, before moving on to the next step, is basically, if you've got a histogram like this, you can go reverse it and create that microdata set for this histogram. And that's basically what they're doing. All of their internal infrastructure for creating tabulations is predicated on the fact that you're giving their software a clean microdata set, and then it creates all the tabulations. They hit the go button, and few months later, it gives back the entire nation's applications. But so basically what they've done is they've created an algorithm that can take a microdata set of individuals, turn it into a histogram, add noise to the histogram, back out a new simulated microdata set from that histogram, which they can then push through all of their existing internal procedures and create the calculations. Give you an idea of kind of how this works. This was the process in 2010. Oh, actually, this is the process now. So they get their responses. They turn that into a file that has all the columns they want, but like there's missing data. Then they create what's called a census edited file, which basically means they filled in all of the missing data using other algorithms. So there's noise there too that we're dismissing. But they start with the census edited file, which is basically like that microdata set I showed you at the beginning. And there's no missing data. And then they're running it through what's called the noise barrier, which means that on this side of the noise barrier are raw data, and on this side of the barrier are basically synthetic data. Data that have been constructed for that process of creating a histogram, creating noise, and then turning that histogram back into a microdata file. And that's what they call a microdata detail file. And from that, they create their own tabulations. So Tim mentioned the PL94 171, for example. That's public law 94 171. That's the file that they have to create for purposes of redistricting. And it's also used for enforcing the Voting Rights Act and things like that. So when they enforce the Voting Rights Act, they see how many white people voted, how many African Americans voted. They compare it with what the census says, how many white people and African American people there are in every county or whatever. The demographic and housing characteristics file is what most people are going to use. It's formally called summary file 1, but it's got most of your tabulations. Actually, I don't know what the EHC is. This is a file that they create for American Indian and Alaska Native and Native Hawaiians. They have their own levels of geography. And then also, cities can request special tabulations sometimes. Like if they get a new boundary, they say, can you create a tabulation for us? Researchers, like me and you, can request data, and the idea is that all of this will be easily provided by people on the other side of the noise barrier. And the idea is if you want, some researchers, you can get access to the data on the other side of the noise barrier.
So previously, where did the swapping occur?
So previously, swapping would have occurred in the same place. But so the way you think about it in swapping, some of the microdata records would have been unaffected. Some of them would have been affected. Now, on the other side of the noise barrier, every single record is basically synthetic.
So that sort of begs the question here of, since the noise barrier is sort of happening on the individual level records, is that right?
They're adding noise to that fully saturated histogram. There are other active research on this. There are potentially ways to create other differential privacy mechanisms, maybe not epsilon differential, but there's other ways of defining differential privacy. There's some that are defined at the individual level. The census really isn't considering that yet. And so, for example, you have some locally differential privacy on your phone. Locally differential privacy is when the individual record is modified. So, for example, Apple collects information about which emojis you use, and I don't know what they use that for, research on what emojis we use. We need that smiling emoji, I don't know. But,
Yes.
So they've got an algorithm that sends data to their servers every time you use an emoji, but it actually creates some noise. So sometimes it sends the emoji you use, sometimes it sends some other emoji that you didn't use. They know what the probability is of getting the wrong answer, but they actually don't know which emoji you used that time. So over the entire population, they can figure out what emojis people are using, but they can't figure out what you're using. So that's another type of algorithm that's called local differential privacy because it operates at the local level. That's a case where you don't even trust the data. You don't even trust the data in your app since we don't trust ourselves. So we're not even going to create a data set that's true. Every piece of information we get is potentially altered by noise. Census is not doing that yet.
So I guess where I was trying to go here in my head very slowly was, are the types of data products that come out, are they going to give us sort of more information statistically? So are we going to get sort of in the giant correlation structure of all these different variables, are we going to get more information with differential privacy, or are we going to have exactly the same things we have now? They're just going to...
We're going to get fewer tables.
Say again?
We're going to get fewer tables than we did before.
Fewer tables.
Fewer tables. And the reason is a lot of those table counts are really tiny, and they don't believe they can reliably do it anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So we are getting a less complete set of tables. Yeah, basically they're saying we never should have published these things in the first place. And if we were to do it now, they'd be so, the ratio of noise to truth would be so high as why you bother producing it.
I mean, how close to just giving us like univariate margins?
Well, so I mean, we'll get univariate statistics for everything that we have before, but it's we won't get 5 and 6 way joints probably.
Yeah, just we thinking like two-way.
It varies.
Like different things that get track, county, whatever level. I don't know.
I don't know the answer to all this.
No problem.
The first step they attempted, and it turned out to really not work at all, was to do everything at the block level. They tried to create fully saturated tables at the block level, add noise there, and just scale up. It's really important to them that everything scales up, that when you add up the block numbers, you get the tract numbers. When you add up the tract numbers, you get the county, etc. It's like, well, let's just do everything at the block level, and then by construction, we can roll everything up. And that actually turned out to be really, really careful. The way they've done this is basically they create histograms at a multitude of levels. And so they create a fully saturated table at the national level, and they create other histograms at other levels. They, I think, are smaller. Hard to tell from the code, and it may have changed. But this is what they did with the 1940 data.
So when you're talking about histograms, you're talking about like full joint or univariate?
Full joint, fully saturated, every single cell imaginable. So at the national level, you've got the 6 variables, and all the categories of those 6 variables interact with each other.
So we got like a Google combination, right? Of just like
not for the decennial, but for the ACS, which they haven't figured out yet. They do that at a bunch of different levels. And they inject noise into every single one of those tables. And the best I can figure out from a complicated GitHub repository, and some discussion of what they do at various conferences, is they create that microdata set at the national level, and then they run a linear optimizer, Ruby, to basically take all of that synthetic data at the national level and to put them down at the state level in such a way that they're very close to their noisy state level histograms. So they take these synthetic national people and they put them in the 50 states in such a way that when you add up the cells in the 50 states, they're very close to their noisy histograms. And then they do that at the county level. They take the people in each state and they push them down to the counties in such a way that when you have them up, they're close to whatever their noisy county histograms is. And they do this all the way down to tracts, block groups, and blocks. And so there's noise injected at each one of these levels. And so there's the discussion of what's called a privacy budget, which basically, the idea is every time information is published about you, that uses some of the privacy budgets. And so you are in the national table, you're in the state table, you're in the county table, et cetera. And so we can basically add up all of the information that's been published about you every time they create a table, and add all the noise in. So yeah, there's this idea of a privacy budget. This turns out to produce much better estimates at the large geographic levels than the bottom-up approach. They call it the bottom-up approach and then the top-down approach. The big differences between the bottom-up and the top-down are in this approach we get much more reliable state and county level estimates than we do for the bottom-up approach. Census publishes tables for all kinds of things. We call those in the census, we call this the spine of all the census geography. So these are all the census geographies, regions, that we publish data for. Nation, region, division, state, county, tract, block, or block, those are fine. But we also have boundaries for places, which oftentimes are cities, but not always. We have boundaries for public use microdata areas, and these are they release as microdata, but they've got their own boundaries. State legislative districts, the state center shape their boundaries, and state legislative publish data for their urban growth areas. Zip codes, actually not zip codes, but post office doesn't create a shapefile of zip codes, because they don't care what people don't live. They just care about the address, where it is. Census wants to create a shapefile, so they create something else, what they call zip codes, tabulation areas. School districts, etc. These things off the spine, the way these are now being constructed is it seems that they're just rolling up the blocks to each one. So once they've basically taken their population and their synthetic population and used their linear optimizer to put them down into blocks, then they can roll all those blocks to get these other things. The assumption that I think we have to make, we're still trying to figure this out, we just had a month with the data, is the reason for going with the top-down approach was because it gave us more reliable state and county estimates because we were creating histograms at those levels. We're not creating histograms at these levels. These are being just populated from the bottom up using the blocks. So I think the farther things are away from the spine, the less reliable we're probably going to be. We're going to have basically now in the bottom up situation. That's kind of I haven't fully been able to explore that. But I think all these decisions they're making about how they're creating data is going to have impacts on data quality at different scales and different geographies. There's a lot of policy decisions. I think they call them policy decisions in the Census Bureau. One is, what is the total privacy budgets? How big is epsilon? How big is the spread of that Laplace or that geometric distribution? And not only that, but you could have the same Laplace distribution for the block histograms that you do for the state histograms, or you can have different ones. All of these are decisions that need to be made. Not only that, but they're choosing tables. They got to publish the PL94, the redistricted tables. They also have to create the demographic and housing characteristic tables. They're trying to choose their histograms to kind of match those. But how do you balance those two tables? They're really slightly different information for redistricting purposes than they do for the demographic and housing characteristics. Maybe give equal weight to the noise of the histograms in both of those. These are decisions that they're kind of just let's do the same thing for everything right now.
Random question: are they truncating the Laplace or geometric distribution?
No, that would break different prices.
I mean,
it goes out to 50. And it's got very heavy tails.
This is going to hurt someone's feelings.
You'll see it. That's exactly right. Gaussian noise is not epsilon diffraction right. So we've got to allocate privacy across the geography. We've got to allocate privacy across the budgets. And then we've also got these things which are called invariants. These are things that we cannot add noise to. So the Constitution says we cannot add noise to the population count at the state level. That's in the Constitution. So that's something that they've decided that they cannot tweak. And so when they do their optimization, basically they make sure that they distribute, when they distribute people down to the state level, that they are not changing the raw counts of people at the state level. They want to draw the line in the sand, saying that state population counts, or we're going to create the invariance. But they're getting a lot of pressure to have more invariance. And it's not clear that invariance, they've done some results, and there's invariance possibly break the theory behind differential privacy. It's not entirely clear, because basically when you're doing your optimization, you're bringing raw information back in the form of your invariance, and haven't quite figured this out yet. But they absolutely want to draw the line saying states are invariant, and that's it. But people even within census, this is really important to me, we make places invariant. Census has created a board inside census, which they call, I can't remember what it's called now, the policy board, which is supposed to make these decisions. They basically said that policymakers, society, should be making decisions about how much privacy we have, not the statisticians. They've argued that privacy should be a social decision, not a statistical decision. But yet they're saying we're creating a small group of people within the Census Bureau at the top levels, and these are going to be policymakers. But I've been concerned about this. And, what would have been there to prevent the Department of Commerce, Census sits under, from saying we need citizen counts to be an invariant? They possibly could have done that. It's hard to say. I know census would have thought that, but the idea of invariance, I think, is a dangerous one. If people know what they are, policymakers start to request that.
What do you mean by that? The policymaker?
Well, I mean, if, I have a fairly high degree of trust that people inside the Census Bureau want to protect as much privacy as possible. But we've created a tool in the form of invariance where the policymaker says, oh, you can fix citizen count at the block level? I didn't do that. Let's do it. That's what I mean by, I think it's kind of an easy concept for anyone to latch onto. Any policymaker outside census.
Not realizing what breaks.
Yeah, maybe they do. Yeah. So here's some, trying to get an idea of what is the effect of differential privacy. So here's some results done by the folks at the Minnesota Pop Center using the 1940 census, because they've got all of the original 1940 data at the Pop Center, and they were able to take the GitHub code that Census had put up, and they were able to run a bunch of simulations saying, what happens if we change up something, and seeing how that affects the differences between output data and input data. And so on this axis, you've got the truth, if you will. And on this axis, you've got the differentially private data. And then in each facet, we've got varying levels of epsilon from very little noise added to a lot of noise added. And when you look at each one of these dots here is a county. In general, county 1940. In general, all of these from very little noise to a lot of noise. County level populations don't seem to be radically changed by the infusion of noise. Everything's pretty close to the 45-degree line. And there are, realizing probably some of these differences are going to be washed out. There's a few things off the 45-degree line down there, but it's not bad. But that's county level population. What if we go down to enumeration districts, which they didn't have census tracts in 1940, but enumeration districts were a geography of the census used for internal purposes of enumerating. And they're roughly the idea of what we think of as a census tract, a little bigger. But here's what you see at these types of scales. This is a log scaling, so enumeration districts with 1 person, 10 people, 100,000, 10,000. And you start to see somewhere around 100 or somewhere between 100 and 1,000. You start to see things possibly getting quite far off the 45-degree line, quite big differences between the truth and what's coming out the other side. Yeah, it's I don't know, somewhere between 100 and 1,000. It seems to be, I think, it's pretty robust across a lot of different things. They've looked at a lot of different things. This is the percentage of the population who is African American. This is when they're again adding very little noise, and here's where they're adding a lot of noise. There's a lot of debate about what epsilon means and what's considered a good epsilon. The computer scientists who invented this believe that epsilon should be like 0.001 or something like that. And here we're looking at epsilon at 0.25, and we're saying this is probably not good enough. And so we're getting some discussion between the computer scientists who have been doing this in their heads and people doing this on the ground and saying, the way you've been thinking about security isn't practical for people who actually need data. Maybe it works in the toy data sets you've been looking at, but when we try this in real data, so.
Is it too soon to ask you about the level that the Census Bureau chose?
For the 2010?
Yes.
I think.
Or is it?
Yeah, I think they chose 1 or 2 or somewhere in there.
They chose 6.
Oh, they chose 6?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So,
Because that seems like that's a.
that's on the end of very little noise.
Yeah. Yeah.
I didn't realize it was times 6 for 2010. No, you're probably right. This is another thing. It's kind of funny. I think a lot of this, to be honest, is smoke and mirrors. Saying, look at us, we are pushing the boundary in creating technologies to protect data. I actually think that basically they're saying that if there's a breach, we did our damnedest to prevent that. And maybe it wasn't enough, but you can't fault us for not trying. They really are technologically pushing the boundaries here. And I think the science, to be honest, isn't there for 2020, but it's going to have to be, I guess. Here is this is something produced by some friends of mine inside the Census Bureau. And I'm not supposed to say their names. But a lot of people in the Census Bureau are not happy with differential privacy. And so this is looking at the population in urban areas for every single urban area of the United States. This is a percent difference in population. So here we've got urban areas with a 5% difference, 10% difference, 15% difference. Here's 1,000. Here's these are 100 millions. So yeah, these are millions. And then we get down to 10,000 down here. And for some urban places, yeah, we're getting quite large differences. One thing that they found is that the average difference across the nation is negative. The urban counts that we can get from we've done in 2010, it appears that we've lost about 800,000 people from cities.
It's true. I found the same thing in Tennessee.
Yeah. And I think 12,000 people in Tennessee. Nationwide, it's 800,000. And in fact, it actually did this by being able to redefine what counted as urban, because they were able to use all of their decision rights for urban culture. So finally, the boundaries that we have to boundaries, reclaim boundaries, private data. And I think part of this makes sense. I mean, think about adding noise is basically a smoother. And when you add noise to the histograms, they can actually go negative. But you don't get negative counts because the way they're doing it is they're taking that synthetic data and pushing it down to match the histograms. You obviously can't push down negative people. Basically, if something gets noised to a negative number, the true is going to be 0. The effect is small places. You can't make them smaller. So rural places are going to get more people, and urban places are, on average, going to get less. So I think we're going to see a lot of that sort of thing. Is that rare? On average, I think rare populations, or the smaller population, may go up on average, but there's going to be a huge amount of noise. So on average, there's less rural places.
It's getting truncated somewhere.
Yeah, and so it's the small places it's going to be truncated, which is rural. It's going to be other small populations as well. So you're getting noise and bias for the small places. Here's some estimates that I've run for school districts in the area. And the black line is the published 2010 estimates, and the red line is the noise 2010 estimates. And these are age groups, so we've got 0, 1, 2, 3, all the way up to 19 years of age. Knox County, by far, the biggest school district in the area. They actually track pretty well. And for scale year, we're looking at 5,000 each bin, whereas some of these are down in the hundreds. So not bad for Knox County. But like Alcoa School District, I mean, this is kind of this is the smallest one in the nearby area. If you were to look at this, here's 6. So these kids over here are going to be in kindergarten in a few years. Do you need to double the number of seats for kindergarten in a few years, or not? The difference here is between 100 and almost 200, so like 2 and 3-year-olds. This creates a big challenge. So not a big deal for Knox County, but yeah, it seems to have a really big impact on small populations. We see trends. There are some places where, if you were to smooth like the red line, I still think we kind of see the trends. But we're going to have to come up with algorithms that do a lot of smoothing in order to make sense out of this data. This is a really fun one. Anyone know what Colorado County is? What is it?
It's a former prison area, right?
Really close. Leper colony. So it's a bullet. And you can't get there. You need a permit to get there. This is the sign. Hawaii law forbids anyone being on this point. So they closed this leper colony down in 1950, and they're not allowed any kids. Basically, the people who are part of the colony have been permitted to stay there because they're pretty disfigured, many of them, and they are worried about integrating back into society. So they're allowed to stay there. This is their population from previous descendant censuses. And this is their estimate the truth is 90 people, and what just got published was 720. Again, it's a small time, it's kind of a silly example, but this is the type of thing we're going to see. Do you want to show?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Just another example, too, I have people discussing is group quarters, which is the prisons and jails and things like that. Maybe it might be an all-male reformatory, something like that will have females in it to protect the privacy of the individuals in those prisons and jails.
Do you have them here?
What's that?
Do you have them here, or did you already?
This one?
I said, did you have any slides, more slides?
Just this one. We just want to share one back to kind of a real world example on like how this type of data is. Census data is actually integrated pretty tightly into the Tennessee code and that sort of thing. We found 600 references to it. But what's interesting, most of those are like to include or exclude single counties. So it might be a county between 875,500 and 877,000, whatever that is, 500 is. So just that law applies to just that single county. Those aren't that big of a deal.
So apparently it's illegal to single out a county by name in state statute, but you can single out a county by creating a definition so narrow that only one county fits it.
Nice.
Yeah, it's clever. I mentioned this earlier, right? So $141 per person, $1.2 billion distributed to the states, to the cities and the counties. If you go look at that $1.2 billion and break it up by the sales tax, state beer tax, the formulas that are used to distribute those, about 87% of those formulas have some basis that includes a per capita distribution. And if you look at the breakdown of the cities inside the state of Tennessee, kind of like that middle point, that halfway point, the size of those cities is about 1,856 people. Half of them are smaller, half of them are larger. So the typical town in the state is very small. There's just a few kind of out at the other end. But this is kind of how it's referred to in the code. In the proportion, the distributions are, this is state sales tax, are made up of the proportion of the population of each municipality varies to the aggregate population of municipalities in the state, according to the latest federal census. So when this federal census is taken in 2010 and 2020, it's used for 10 years. So that whether you're growing, whether you're shrinking, you're stuck with what you get in 2010, which is why, or in 2020, the upcoming one, which is why it's so important. There's one way around that. You can conduct a special census where you actually poll people yourself. Our office helps communities do that, and we turn it into DC, Department of Economic Community Development. They certify it, they get more revenue the next time the budget comes out. So, Nick's mentioned this. I can add a few more years to this, go back to 1950 apparently. But the invariant fields in the census up to this point included things like total population. Total population is what's used as the basis of the per capita distributions of state share revenues. So the fact that this now would no longer be an invariant field has some bearing on the distribution across the cities and counties when they're done on a per capita basis. So looking at so this I showed you that the 2010 number, $141.80, and then using the 2010 demonstration, differential privacy demonstration products that came out, we can kind of look at the places, so-called census incorporated areas, and see what the impact on revenues would be. And so, total revenue, basically what we just did is we take the revenue forecast times the 2010 population using differential privacy population total. That gives us total revenue that municipality would get from the state share. Good. I saw some of the animation, so I need the animation. Okay, so those fly. Right. All right. So if you take that and then divide that by the summary file 1 number, so these are the original 2010 numbers that come out. What that gives you is essentially an effective revenue per capita, but it lets you see how the amount of, we'll see in a second a couple of towns, what the cities are getting when differential privacy is applied on a per capita basis and how it affects them. So we looked at two similar sized towns that are kind of at the opposite ends of the scales. The city of Warburg, Tennessee had a population of 918 in the 2010 census. In the differential privacy data that came out, it's increased by about 350 to 1,293 people. And then kind of at the other, this is about a 40 or 50% increase. At the other end, Gordonsville, Tennessee, which is a little exit by Carthage on I-40, 2010 had 1,213 people. 1062 is what it got under the new product. So if you do this formula, instead of $141 per $142, they're getting almost $200 per person. So take that times versus $124 per person. So that's what you're going to get for every person in your town for the next 10 years, effectively. You won't know this as a city or county the stall behind the noise barrier that we've described, and so you won't see any of this. But what does that kind of equate to in terms of those lost revenues? The state, like a city like Wartburg, this is about a 2% increase in their total revenues as a city. So that's not insubstantial. That's a large amount of money for the city the size of Wartburg. But for the city of Gordonsville, this is like $50,000 a year. The city of Gordonsville, this might be a police officer or something like that. The city of Gordonsville was going to lose about $18,000 a year. They spent $10,000 last year on road projects. So that's a good chunk of the road budget for what we spend on rate this year. So these are meaningful amounts of money. And so the laws are involved. The laws haven't evolved. And I don't know what the answer is, but this is kind of what the distribution looks like of cities in the state. There's kind of a big chunk of them are kind of in the middle, where they're kind of near that tax estimate of $142. But if you look, this grant shows if you look down $121, $137, $103, $120. So they are favoring small. They're getting smaller in many cases than they were under the Summary File 1 information. And the majority of these towns that are out there on the ends of it are the smaller ones. So they are being disproportionately impacted. And they're probably arguably the ones that are most vulnerable to a loss of some portion of their revenue through these state shares. So I actually have some charts and histograms of the scatter plot similar to what he did for the cities and towns. And it's interesting because it's the exact same sort of thing where it just kind of clusters right down here to show that it's well under what it was before. So that's all I got. So
I'll tell you a little bit about kind of technologically where census isn't where they'd like to be yet. One thing that they're really struggling with are duplicating tables that have interactions between people. So like, for example, how many two-person households have a single parent? That requires constraints between individuals. And they're not quite there yet. Things that require, getting reliable relations between number of people for housing need, for example. That's the same sort of story. So anything requiring links between different people or between people or houses. They didn't even try that in 1940. They've got something. I haven't been able to really dig into the GitHub code yet for 2010 to see what they've done. They've done something new in 2010 to try to get that, but they're still way short. We've shown some of the housing units.
No, but there's a lot of places where I guess it's 100% housing occupancy plus quite responsive for the state.
Yeah, I think, you're adding noise to people or to housing. You're going to get places where, I've seen some places where there's 100% vacancy. I don't know if you can see this sort of thing in small places, especially if they're adding independent noise to people and housing. There's talk about making housing units at the block level invariant. Yeah, makes sense. So yeah, these sorts of things we're really struggling with. Still really concerned about things, as I said, off the spine, like places, or off the spine of geography. The spine is county, tract, block. Places are not that. And places are probably what people most want in many ways. Towns care about the population, for funding as a source of pride. Driving on the freeway, there's the population of the town. And these things are important, very important. And they are in no way constrained. They're bottom up, they're built up from blocks. Look at a place like Oliver Springs, straddles 3 different counties. There's that's pretty far off the spine. And then going forward, all these problems that we have with the decennial census, The census has said that they're going to implement, their deadline for implementing differential privacy in the ACS is the middle of the decade. But I think the problems are exponentially more challenging. With the 100 variables as opposed to 70 variables. I don't think they're going to make that just right now. I don't think they're going to make that mid-decade deadline. But that's what they're saying is their deadline. And so the plan is to implement differential privacy across the entire bureau, starting with relatively simple 7 variables.
There's things like where it hasn't been discussed yet, like population estimates. I haven't really heard how that's going to be integrated or will impact population estimates.
There's been, the census inside has a group of people that do the annual pop estimates. So what they do is they take the annual census and they look at IRS records to see how many people are moving in, how many people are moving out. They look at vital statistics for births and deaths. They have models for international migration, and then they say, here's our official estimate for Knox County's population in 2011. We do the same thing in 2012. This is the pop estimates. There's been talk about, from what I heard, is that they may get access to it before the noise barrier, do their estimates, and then add noise before the publish it. So at least their algorithm would be based on the actual data rather than doing their projections on noisy data. But I think it's very, very much up in the air. And this matters for the ACS because it's actually the pop estimates that are the controls for surveys throughout the Census Bureau. Pop estimates are scary. And pop estimates are really important. Pop estimates are actually how we know there's an undercount of African Americans. Because pop estimates has been insisted for a long time that there's an undercount of African Americans. Because basically, every time you do a census, there are way more 20-year-old African Americans than there were African American children 20 years ago. And we know this because the pop estimates has all the live statistics, and they do that. And so, yeah, we believe that there's a pretty significant, like maybe 3% or so undercount of African American children. And that's as we see them 10, 20 years later in the census.
Let's put a bow on this. Like, what do you know the final status of QEP? I know they're still accepting some comments and things on it.
Oh, they are desperate for people to contribute use cases of how decennial census data are being used. They put out a federal register notice last year saying, hey, tell us why census data are important. And no one responded to it. It's like, why would you do that? And they said, oh, we're going to be changing how we do things. And no one had any idea how things have changed again. So they got no reply from that. But I know that they're really desperate for use cases. Basically, they do care about seeing how different privacy affects different use cases. I've been involved in discussions with some folks from the National Council of American Indians. They're trying to put together some use cases. They're really concerned about this because tribal areas are way off the spine, and so many tribes are tiny. They're worried about tribes. Statistically, is scary. And they get funded based on our population counts that live within their tribal boundaries. I don't know if they've got another R notice. I think they decided to do an official R notice. But I keep on hearing, come to us with use cases, come to us with use cases. And I think they can say that to the living face. People still don't yet know really what's coming down the pipe. Like how many of you have seen tables like this? What's coming down the pipe? Even some of the academic communities, I deal with demographers, and last year they were very aware of differential privacy, very concerned. I talked to geographers, and there was nothing in last year's geography meeting about differential privacy and what's happening. So who has knowledge and who doesn't has been very bumpy, and I think even among academics, and I think among policy analysts, no one really knows what's happening.
This may be a great question from across the street, but is there a solution to this problem given the current plans?
I mean, to be honest, I think they could do. I think they could deal with a lot of problems by making place level total population invariant.
Or could they provide invariants just to the state holders that are making the thing? I don't know. I guess there would be some level of transparency that would be required of, well, my count's this, or the census, but
They'd have to give them special sworn Title 13 access.
give me that, or something like that.
They would be able to use the data.
Yeah, right.
But creating, even creating, I think, they made this decision to go down the census geographies kind of tract library block, but those are not what people care about. I mean, I look at census data every day, and I don't even know what tract or what block it or what boundaries are really. People care about places, and if they had done this based on what people care about, they would have thought about trying to get places better than their core geographies. Now that they've made this decision to go down the core geographies, it's hard, I think, to, places don't matter. Places don't even mess with the counties. Like all the strings doesn't mess with the counties. And so they really don't, I think they now realize that places are what people care about, but they don't realize yet how to put places into their algorithm for pushing people down the hierarchy. I think it's a technical problem with that. All the geographers in the bureau are like, oh, we can tell you that this is a statistician. Like, people care about this? I know that a lot of people in the Census Bureau who use the data are really unhappy with this. And it's from the people, there's a research and methodology director in the census who came up with a different privacy mechanism. And statisticians and economists and computer scientists. And they've been kind of taken aback by how much people around the agency have been negatively reacting to privacy.
One other question for like redistricting purposes, how it has worked in the past. Do the people who have done the redistricting, do they have a separate data set from the Census Bureau?
Yeah, so
relative to
I mentioned there's two main data sets that historically come out. One was SF1 file, and the other was the PL94171 file. That PL94171 is what's used for redistricting. And it comes out a few months before, or a year before the March. Yeah, before the other file. And it's got very detailed race statistics.
Yeah.
But less detailed age. Basically, ages, are you voting age or not?
Right. Yeah.
But very, very detailed race statistics. And that's what's in the PL94 file. Now, interestingly, a lot of people have taken that as gospel truth, but there's been a lot of swapping going on there behind the scenes that people don't realize. So we're making boundaries based on minority percentages, but a lot of those are really tiny counts that have been swapped. And so a lot of people are saying we can't redistrict based on noisy data. Well, I'll tell you, didn't do it.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
Any other questions? All right, I think with the wrap, if you guys want to cross the street, go to your poor or somewhere else, we can continue these conversations. Thanks for coming, everybody.
Thanks.
Thank you.
That's good. It's just part of the conversation, I guess. You don't know about this. The politicians don't know about it.
That's right. And actually, that's actually a concern that they have because the politicians don't know about this. They actually don't want people to talk too much about their private privacy.